In old houses across America and Europe, there is a door that was never used for the living. It is not a back door. It is not a servant's entrance. It is a full, formal door, sometimes the grandest door on the wall, and it was built for one purpose only: to carry a body out. The moment a person died inside that house, this door was opened, the coffin was taken through it, and then it was sealed again, and no living person stepped through it until the next death. These doors have names: corpse door, death door, funeral door. And they were not rare. They appear in old farmhouses and manor houses, in churches and in townhomes, across Scandinavia and England and colonial America, built into the walls of ordinary houses by ordinary families who understood something about the old world that we were never taught. And when you find out what they understood and why this practice vanished, the door stops looking like superstition. It starts looking like a record of something that was deliberately forgotten. Because here is the thing that should stop you before we go any further. These doors were not accidents of architecture. They were planned. A separate door, framed into the wall at great expense, used once every generation, and then sealed. You do not build something that expensive and that deliberate unless the reason behind it is serious. So the question is, what the reason actually was. And the official answer, that it was only folklore, a superstition about confusing the spirit of the dead, does not hold up against the physical evidence of how carefully and how widely these doors were built. Superstitions do not get load-bearing frames. They do not get carved lintels. They do not appear in the architectural records of serious builders across a dozen countries over several centuries. This was something people knew, and somewhere between then and now, the knowing stopped. Stay with me, because everything in this video points back to something you can see with your own eyes in old buildings. We open one of these every week. So start with the plain physical fact, because the plain physical fact is the strangest part. Walk through an old farmhouse in Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and you will find, in many of them, a second door. Not opposite the main entrance, usually on the north wall or the side wall where it would see the least traffic. Sometimes slightly wider than a normal door, because it had to accommodate a coffin carried horizontally, and in many cases, the threshold is set lower than the main threshold, or the door frame shows a subtle difference in the stonework around it, as if it was added with a different purpose in mind. That difference in purpose is not disputed. These doors are documented in architectural surveys and in the folk records of half a dozen countries. They are called by different names in different languages, but the function is the same everywhere. In Norway, the door was called the likdør, the corpse door. In Denmark, it was the ligdør. In parts of Sweden, the same tradition is recorded in farm inventories and in the records of local builders, sometimes noted alongside the specifications for the door's width. These are not legends handed down by oral tradition alone. They appear in written building records, in estate inventories, and in the accounts of architects and surveyors who measured and cataloged old buildings and found, in house after house, a second door that had no ordinary domestic use. The documentation exists, and it is specific. You can find the measurements. You can find the locations. You can find the notes that say plainly what the door was for. The tradition is just as documented in England and in colonial America. Old New England houses, the kind built in the 16 and 1700s, often had what the families called a funeral door, a door in the side of the house, sometimes cut directly through the parlor wall, that was used only for the formal laying out of the body and the carrying of the coffin. Some were built with wide double leaves for exactly this reason, because a single door might not allow a coffin to pass easily. The width was not an accident, it was a specification. And here is the detail that makes this strange rather than merely old-fashioned. In many documented cases, after the coffin passed through, the door was not just closed, it was sealed, bricked up in some cases, or nailed shut, with a formality that made it clear the sealing was intentional and permanent, until the next death in the house required it to be opened again. A door that is sealed between deaths is not a door that was forgotten, it is a door that is being kept, a door that is waiting. Now let me give you the official explanation, because you should hear it fairly, and because part of it is genuinely true. The folk belief attached to these doors, in almost every culture that built them, was about direction and about confusion. The spirit of the dead, it was said, might try to find its way back into the house. By carrying the body out through a door that was never otherwise used, you gave the spirit a route it could not retrace. The main door, the one the living used every day, remained a boundary the dead could not cross, because they had never left through it. The coffin door was a one-way passage, built into the architecture of the house itself. That is the folk explanation, and it is real, and it was taken seriously by the people who built these doors. But here is what the folk explanation does not account for. It does not account for the width. A belief about spiritual direction does not require a door wide enough to pass a horizontal coffin comfortably. The practical specification, the extra width, the lower threshold, the specific placement, points to a real physical need, not only a spiritual one. People were building infrastructure for the dead, not just symbolically, architecturally. So ask the question the official story does not ask. What did people in the old world actually understand about what happens in a house where someone dies, that required them to build permanent, expensive, load-bearing infrastructure to manage it? And this is where the story opens out into the wider pattern that this channel has been tracing from the beginning. Because the corpse door is not the only piece of old-world death infrastructure that has vanished from daily life. It belongs to a whole system of practices around death that the old world treated as ordinary, architectural, and serious, and that the modern world has quietly dismantled and moved off-site. Consider the room. In the old world, the dead were laid out at home, not in a funeral parlor, not in an institution, in the parlor of the house, in the room that was specifically set aside for formal occasions, so that the family and the neighbors could come to sit with the body, to mark the passage, and to carry the coffin out through the door that was built for exactly that moment. The parlor of the old world was a death room, not because people were morbid, but because death happened at home, and the house was built to accommodate it. That is why the parlor was formal. That is why it was kept empty of everyday use. That is why the furniture was draped, and the mirrors were covered, and the coffin door in the side wall was kept sealed and ready. The parlor and the corpse door were parts of the same system, a house that was built to hold the whole of life, including its end. And then, within a very short window of time around the turn of the 20th century, that system was dismantled. The timing is not vague. After the American Civil War, for the first time in history, large numbers of families needed to bury men who had died far from home, and the logistics of transporting bodies over long distances created a new profession. The embalmer and the professional undertaker arrived together, and they brought with them a promise. You do not have to do this at home anymore. The dead can be taken somewhere else. The formal viewing can happen somewhere else. The preparation can happen somewhere else. And for families who had never had to manage death at scale, the offer was welcome. By the early 1900s, the funeral parlor was establishing itself in American towns, and the domestic death room was beginning to empty out. And in 1910, a magazine called the Ladies' Home Journal published an article that, quietly and without any drama, suggested that American families rename their best parlor. Not the funeral parlor, they said. Call it the living room, a room for the living, not the dead. It is one of the earliest documented uses of that phrase to mean what it means today. And it was a suggestion that spread so fast and so completely that within a generation, almost no one remembered what the best parlor had been for. The room was renamed, the function moved off-site, and the coffin door, with no coffins left to carry, was sealed. Stop for a second and really sit with that. The room where your family was laid out was renamed to erase what it was for. The door that was built to carry them through was sealed, and its name was forgotten. And the knowledge that a house was once built to hold death as well as life was so thoroughly removed from the common understanding that most people alive today would be genuinely surprised to learn it had ever been any other way. That is not a practice falling out of fashion. That is an infrastructure being dismantled. And the question that follows from it is the same question this channel always comes back to. Who benefited from moving death out of the house? Who benefited from moving death out of the house? The answer to the first part is easy, and it is not a conspiracy. The funeral industry benefited. A profession that had barely existed before the Civil War became, within 50 years, one of the most consistently profitable service businesses in the country, because it had successfully moved a function that every family needed into a building that only they could provide. Death had been free to manage at home. It became something you paid for, at a price set by someone else, in a space you did not own. That is a business model, and it is documented, and it worked. What was lost when the door was sealed for the last time? Because here is what the old world understood that we were not taught. A house that holds death is a house that holds the full weight of life. When you carry your dead through a door in your own wall, you remain in contact with the reality of what it means to live in a body, in a place, among people who will not always be there. The corpse door kept that truth inside the architecture of daily life. You walked past it every day, you knew what it was for, and that knowledge shaped how you lived in the house, and how you understood the time you had in it. And the corpse door was not alone in that work. The whole house conspired to hold death in view. The mirrors in the parlor were covered when a body lay there, not from grief alone, but from the same logic as the door, the idea that a reflective surface was a threshold that needed managing when the boundary between the living and the dead was open. The clocks were stopped at the moment of death, and not restarted until the body had left the house, so that time itself marked the passage. The furniture was draped, the curtains were drawn, the house went into a mode that everyone in it recognized, and that every element of its architecture had been designed to accommodate. The corpse door was the hinge of a whole system that treated death as something that happened inside the home, and that the home was built to hold. When death moved to a building down the street, and the parlor became the living room, and the coffin door was bricked into the wall, something was taken out of the domestic experience of being alive. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was simply moved and renamed, and the door was sealed, and no one told the next generation what had stood on the other side of it. And this connects, as it always does, to the wider pattern. Over and over, in the same narrow window of history, something the old world built into the structure of daily life, into the walls and the floors and the doors of the houses people actually lived in, was quietly removed, and the space it left behind was given a new name, or plastered over, or simply left to be forgotten. The old world did not separate life from death the way we do. It built a door for death, a room for death, an entire domestic architecture that acknowledged what we now prefer to keep off-site and out of sight. The door is still there in a great many old houses, behind the plaster, behind the newer brickwork. Some have been found in renovations, the original frame still intact, the threshold still set an inch lower than the rest of the floor, the extra width still obvious to anyone who knows what they are looking at. The door was sealed, but it was not removed. It is still there, still waiting, still pointing at a way of understanding a house and a life that we were never taught was an option. And not just metaphorically. In renovation after renovation of old New England houses, of old Scandinavian farmhouses, of old English manor properties, builders have broken through walls and found them. The original frame still in the plaster, the threshold set that inch lower than the rest of the floor, the extra width still there, still obvious, still built to the specification of a horizontal coffin. The door was sealed and the name was forgotten, and the generation that sealed it died. But the carpenter who built it was careful, and the frame is still square, and it is still there inside the wall, exactly where it was placed, still waiting for someone to know what they are looking at when they find it. So here is where I leave it. The corpse door was real, and documented, and built into the walls of ordinary houses across Europe and colonial America for hundreds of years. The parlor was a death room, formally and deliberately. The system that surrounded both was dismantled in a single generation, right around the turn of the 20th century, and the next generation grew up in houses with living rooms and no corpse doors and no memory of either. What exactly was lost in that transition, and whether the loss was a gain or something else, is the one thing no renovation and no renaming could settle for you. That judgment is still yours. If this is the kind of history you have been looking for, the kind sealed up inside the walls of the buildings you already live in, then subscribe and turn on the bell. We open one of these every single week. And if you want the whole pattern in one place, the old world, what replaced it, and how to read the traces of it still standing in your own town, it is all in the complete archive, linked in the description and pinned in the comments below. But before you go, I want you to do one thing. Think about every old house you have ever been inside. Think about the doors. Think about whether there was one that was always sealed, always nailed shut, always plastered over, and ask yourself whether you ever wondered why. Because now you know what it might have been waiting for.